Welcome back, everybody. Today we're diving deep into two books that you might think are totally different at first glance.
Yeah.
Dopamine Nation by Anna Lembke and Deaths of Despair and the Future of Capitalism by Angus and Angus Deaton.
Okay.
One book is all about how addictive our modern life is, and the other is looking at how death rates are going up in certain groups of people in America.
Interesting.
So we want to find out
Uh-huh.
if there's actually a connection
Right.
between all the things we do to get that dopamine rush
Yeah.
and the bigger forces that might be making people feel hopeless.
Okay, I'm in. Let's do it.
So right away,
Yeah.
both of these books talk about this feeling of emptiness in modern life.
Well, in Dopamine Nation, Lembke calls it a dopamine deficit state.
Uh-huh.
It's like we're always craving more stimulation, more.
Right, and then in Deaths of Despair,
Yeah.
Case and Deaton are pointing to how people are losing stable jobs
Yeah.
and that sense of community.
Exactly. And it's hitting those less educated white Americans especially hard.
All right, so let's break down this whole dopamine deficit state thing.
Okay.
Lembke basically says that our brains are wired to chase pleasure and avoid pain.
Right. Makes sense.
But all this stuff we have now, smartphones, drugs, all that,
Oh, yeah.
it throws our internal balance way off. It's like
Right.
we're overloading the system.
Mhm.
She uses this example of a scientist who gets hooked on all these intense stimuli.
Okay.
And it keeps escalating until he has to use electroshock therapy
Wow.
just to feel anything at all.
That's pretty extreme.
It shows you just how much the brain can adapt to pleasure.
You need more and more to get the same effect.
Yeah, and that connects to the economic stuff Case and Deaton are talking about.
How so?
Well, when wages are going down, jobs aren't secure, and your social status feels shaky,
Yeah.
it creates this feeling of hopelessness.
It's like you have no control over your own life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're more likely to reach for something, anything.
To make you feel better, even if it's just for a little while.
Exactly. And that might be where those deaths of despair come in.
Right.
The ones Case and Deaton describe: suicide, drug overdoses, alcohol-related diseases.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah, and those deaths are going up in middle-aged white Americans.
Especially those without a college degree.
Right.
It makes you wonder, are they trying to escape a life that just feels meaningless?
That's the big question.
And it's interesting because Lembke, who's a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
she talks about this thing called therapeutic pain.
Like what?
Cold showers, intense exercise, things like that.
Okay.
She thinks these activities can actually reset our dopamine balance.
Oh, so it's like hitting the reset button on your brain.
Exactly.
But could it be that we're not getting enough of this good pain in modern life?
Huh. What do you mean?
Like the pain that comes from facing challenges and building resilience.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Are we so focused on comfort and ease
Right.
that we're missing out on the good that can come from hardship?
Interesting.
Because Case and Deaton also talk about the breakdown of families and communities,
Yeah, they say marriage rates are down and social isolation is up.
especially for those without a college degree.
Again.
It's like both books are saying
Yeah.
that when we lose that connection,
To meaningful work
right,
and to strong social bonds.
it can lead to despair.
It's like we're missing those crucial support systems.
But Deaths of Despair doesn't just blame economics, right?
Right? They talk about cultural shifts, too.
Like why?
Things like the tyranny of the meritocracy.
What's that?
It's this idea that if you're not successful, you're a failure.
Oh, wow.
And that idea is everywhere in our society.
It's no wonder so many people feel inadequate and despairing.
And that's where the link to dopamine really comes in.
How so?
Well, in a world where success is measured by likes, followers, money,
Mm-hmm.
people get caught in this endless cycle of chasing external validation.
So they're chasing those dopamine hits,
Exactly.
but neglecting their deeper needs.
It's like we're constantly comparing ourselves to others.
Always striving for this image of happiness that's always just out of reach.
And that constant striving, fueled by dopamine and societal pressure,
And actually be making
no
it
more unhappy. It's a real paradox,
It is, and this brings us back to this idea of pain.
which Lembke really dives into.
Right. She says that experiencing pain in a healthy way
Yeah.
can actually reset our pleasure-pain balance.
It's like how a cold shower can feel amazing after a tough workout.
It makes you more sensitive to the simple joys in life.
Exactly.
But Case and Deaton, they don't talk about pain directly,
True.
but they do highlight this loss of dignity and meaning that a lot of Americans are feeling.
Right.
So could this lack of meaning, this absence of struggle,
Be part of the problem.
have we become so afraid of pain that we've forgotten about its potential benefits?
That's a powerful question.
It really gets to the heart of what both books are trying to tell us about being human.
About finding that balance between pleasure and pain.
And about creating a society that supports meaning and connection.
Absolutely. It's interesting how Case and Deaton bring up the opioid crisis in Deaths of Despair.
Oh, yeah.
They argue that while overprescribing definitely played a role,
Uh-huh.
it was the underlying despair that created the demand in the first place.
Like that lack of opportunity, the feeling of hopelessness.
Exactly. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire that's already out of control.
And they make a good point that this rise in deaths of despair,
Yeah.
it started way before the opioid crisis really took hold.
And it's kept going even as opioid prescriptions have gone down.
Right, so it's not just about the drugs themselves.
Exactly. They call it misbehavior that poured fuel on the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And that ties directly into the Future of Capitalism part of their book title.
Right.
They're saying that the economic system we have right now
Yeah.
is failing a huge chunk of the population.
It's like the system is rigged against them.
Exactly. Declining wages, the decline of
Oh.
unions, the rise of corporate power.
All those things contribute to that sense of despair.
And the feeling that the American dream is slipping away.
Like they're working harder but falling further behind.
And feeling powerless to change anything.
That sense of powerlessness is huge in deaths of despair.
Absolutely.
But one of the most striking things they point out
Yeah.
is the racial divide.
Right. White Americans are seeing this surge in deaths of despair.
Mhm.
But Black Americans, despite facing way more historical and systemic disadvantages,
Right.
they're not.
It's wild.
It's complex.
It is.
Case and Deaton offer some possible explanations.
No boy.
They suggest that the Black community might have stronger social networks
Okay.
and coping mechanisms because of generations of adversity.
They've had to build up that resilience.
Exactly. Resilience in the face of constant hardship.
And that resilience is amazing,
It really is.
especially when you think about the discrimination they still face.
In healthcare, the criminal justice system.
It makes you wonder if those very injustices have somehow shielded Black Americans from the worst of the opioid crisis.
That's a sobering thought.
It highlights that there's no one single explanation for all of this,
It's a tangled web.
of social, economic, cultural, historical factors.
It's messy.
And that makes finding solutions even harder.
Because it's not just about individual choices.
Right. It's about the systems that shape those choices.
It's about creating a society that gives everyone opportunity, dignity, hope.
And that brings us back to Lembke's focus on connection.
Yeah.
It's not just about connecting with other people.
But connecting to something bigger than ourselves.
Finding meaning beyond just chasing pleasure.
That search for meaning runs through both of these books.
It's about having a purpose, a reason to get up in the morning.
Something that gives life meaning beyond that next dopamine hit.
And it's about realizing that real happiness
Yeah.
isn't just about feeling good all the time.
It's about living a life of purpose.
Embracing the good and the bad.
The struggle and the triumph.
Both books are saying we need to embrace the whole human experience.
With all its complexities,
So we've explored the connection between Dopamine Nation and Deaths of Despair.
we've seen how that constant chase for pleasure.
Can lead to a void, a feeling of emptiness.
And we've talked about the consequences of that void.
The rising tide of despair taking so many lives.
And how that despair is fueled by these huge societal problems.
Economic inequality. The breakdown of
The
communities.
loss of opportunity.
These are tough issues.
And there are no easy answers.
But both books give us some glimmers of hope.
Some potential ways forward.
Lembke focuses on the individual,
Right. She suggests things like dopamine fasting.
taking breaks from those dopamine-heavy activities,
To reset our pleasure-pain balance.
embracing therapeutic pain,
She also talks about the importance of being radically honest.
and finding healthy sources of pleasure,
Things that bring real joy and connection.
like spending time with loved ones,
Engaging in meaningful work.
connecting with nature.
Finding those things that feed your soul.
Not just give you a quick dopamine rush.
Right.
Case and Deaton take a more big-picture approach.
They want policies that address the root causes of despair.
Things like raising the minimum wage,
Strengthening unions.
expanding access to healthcare,
Creating a more just and equitable society.
giving people the opportunities and resources to live with dignity.
And purpose.
It's about tackling the systemic issues that contribute to inequality and despair.
Racial discrimination. Lack of access to education.
The erosion of the social safety net.
Absolutely.
One thing that really stood out to me in both books
Yeah.
was the importance of community.
Lemke talks about how isolation makes addiction and despair worse.
And Case and Deaton highlight the breakdown of communities as a key factor in the rise of deaths of despair.
It's like we've lost those connections that used to give people support and meaning,
And in a world where we're constantly connected online,
but disconnected in real life.
it's easy to feel isolated.
So how do we rebuild those connections?
How do we create communities that give people a sense of belonging and purpose?
Lemke suggests finding ways to engage with others in meaningful ways.
Volunteering, joining a club, just spending more time with people you care about.
Simple things can make a big difference.
And Case and Deaton want policies that strengthen communities.
Investing in public spaces, supporting local businesses, promoting civic engagement.
It's about creating those places where people can connect, build relationships,
And find that sense of shared purpose.
a sense of belonging that goes beyond the digital world,
It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom,
to feel like things are just getting worse.
but both books offer a message of hope.
They remind us that we're not powerless.
We have choices,
We can make changes in our own lives,
and we can advocate for change in our communities.
choosing hope over despair,
Connection over isolation,
meaning over emptiness,
believing that a better world is possible.
and working together to create it.
So we've been talking about the dark side of this dopamine nation and what's driving those deaths of despair.
But both books actually give us some hope too, right?
Yeah, they both talk about some potential solutions.
Like, Lemke gives us those concrete strategies for kind of resetting our dopamine balance.
Right, like that dopamine fasting we talked about.
Yeah, and finding those healthy ways to get pleasure, the kind that bring real joy and connection.
Nourishing the soul, not just chasing that quick dopamine fix.
Exactly, but Case and Deaton, they're coming at it from a more societal angle, right?
Yeah, they're focused on those bigger structures,
So they want policies that go after the root causes of despair,
like raising the minimum wage,
strengthening unions.
expanding access to healthcare,
It's about making society more fair and just
providing people with the opportunities and resources they need.
to live a life with dignity and purpose,
Right, tackling those systemic issues that feed inequality and despair.
like racial discrimination,
Mm-hmm.
the lack of access to good education, the erosion of the social safety net,
It's about leveling the playing field.
giving everyone a fighting chance.
And, one thing that really hit me in both books,
Is that?
the power of community.
Oh, yeah. Lemke talks about how being isolated makes addiction and despair so much worse.
And Case and Deaton say that the breakdown of communities is a huge factor in those deaths of despair.
It's like we've lost those connections that used to hold people up and give them a reason to keep going,
And in this world where we're always online,
but often feeling more alone than ever.
it's so easy to feel isolated.
So how do we even start to rebuild those
And
connections
to create communities where people feel like they belong.
where they have a purpose?
Lemke says we need to find meaningful ways to engage with each other.
Volunteer, join a club. Just make time for the people we care about.
Those simple things can make a world of difference.
Case and Deaton want policies that make communities stronger.
Investing in public spaces, supporting local businesses, getting people involved in their communities.
It's about creating places where people can meet each other, build relationships, and find that sense of purpose together.
That sense of belonging that goes beyond the screen.
It's easy to get overwhelmed by all this,
Yeah, it can feel like everything's falling apart.
But both of these books give us some real hope.
They remind us that we're not helpless,
We have choices.
individually and as a society.
We can choose hope over despair,
Connection over isolation.
meaning over emptiness.
We can build a better world,
But we have to believe it's possible.
and we have to work together to make it happen,
That's what these books are calling us to do.
to step up and take action.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
What stuck with you the most?
what are you going to do differently
Your own life.
to find more balance and meaning,
How are you going to help build that more just and equitable world?
where everyone has the chance to live a life full of purpose?
Keep diving deep, folks, and we'll catch you next time.